So today I would like to introduce you to Anupama Bhalla. She is a biker, a hiker, and a horse rider, basically a badass. And in her spare time, she worked in media for 25 years. She worked in the two top media houses, India Today and Times of India. She was in charge of the iconic magazines that you must have read, the must-read ones of Hello, Grazia, India Today. Her forte is in hosting events and exhibitions, and she has handled over 500 Anupama, events so far.
Hey, hi Ameeta, and thanks for that intro. It felt good.
I'll revert to Anu now because it's much easier. So, I mean, you had such a glamorous life, but okay, behind the glamorous facade is a lot of work, but a lot of work in writing and in literature. And from what I remember, you are an avid reader.
Literature in college. I did honors in literature, but then I specialized in sales and marketing.
Okay.
I dabbled in a fair amount of writing, off and on, but it was more casual writing.
Okay. But you have been in that arena, so you know what works for people. Yes?
I should hope so.
So my talented friend, how did you come to writing books? I mean, you've decided to take a break. So how did that come to be?
I think you just mentioned that I'm an avid reader, and literally there was a time I would kind of devour 4 to 5 books a month. And there's certain genres I obviously prefer. I obviously top of the line is the whodunit genre. I love that. I love books written in a certain period. What we call period dramas, because of which I think I love literature as a subject. These are the kind of books I tend to read, and of course, I can kind of read any and everything, to be very honest. But obviously, there are certain preferences. So along the way, I used to help people a little bit in their articles, because obviously I was in media and there were magazines that I was surrounded by. So I would help them write certain paragraphs or help edit an article or correct spellings. So though I was in sales and marketing, this was something that I kind of did alongside. So I was always sort of in touch with that side. And then I started writing a few short stories. I've written some non-fictional stuff. I have written some fictional stuff as well. And I've always been wanting to write a novel. And I think we had once shared certain conversations on a novel that I've long been in writing. And so now that I decided after about 30 years of working to quit the corporate life and get down to doing projects, I think it was right time for me to actually start indulging in these things that I wanted to do, but never really had the time. So yeah, that's really where I am today.
So you could have chosen, because you would have had links with all sorts of people within India itself in the writing industry. So why did you choose to come to me, moi?
Right. So Ameeta, we have over the past few years spoken to each other about a lot of things, not necessarily writing, right?
Yeah.
And I do reach out to you whenever I have a problem. So whether it's to do with what next in life, or something as what should I say, talking about life itself.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of conversations there. We've had fun conversations about co-writing stuff, and we've invented all those stories. So I think you were somebody I always reached out to for something like this. And yes, you have been writing. We've spoken about writing. So, and you are a close friend as well. So I think it was a bit of a natural choice for me to talk to you and only you on this. because I know you from school, I know how you write, I know how powerful you are with words and expressions, and then now you've written yourself. So I think it's kind of natural than reaching out to somebody who you don't know. But if you have somebody right next to you who you know well and writes well, and yeah, I mean, it would be a natural choice for me to reach out
So thank you. I loved all of that.
to.
I'm going to highlight that. So I would like to now ask you, when you started writing, so when we started having our conversations to begin with, we began with the ghost stories. We actually looked at your ghost stories. And the ghost stories came from a place, well, but they're stories you've heard from your family and your childhood.
Right.
So when you were developing them, what sort of, obviously during the coaching, could you explain which aspects of coaching helped you bring those out a little more for yourself?
Yeah. So I think there are a lot of things that came through in my conversations with you, which we used to have weekly. Of course, I came to you with one or two problems, but I think it wasn't just problem solving. I think you kind of gave me the formal path of how to write. So, I mean, I certainly would like to speak about that. So, like I told you, I've been dabbling in writing. So it's more like, you get an idea and you kind of pen it down, and it's maximum of 2 paragraphs, 1 page. It's not really a story which you can hand over to a reader to read, because at least there needs to be a lot more substance in that. So I think the few key things that came to me in my conversations with you, which obviously helped me with these stories and starting to write the book, is the fact that you really gave me, or rather told me, the exact way in which to grow beyond just the formal lines of that story. You know, starting from something as basic as a description at the beginning of the story, because I was just penning a story, something as simple as that to how I can look at everyday incidents and bring them into my story. I still remember you gave me an interesting example. You said, if you just see a squirrel in a park doing something, write a para about that squirrel. You may never get to use it, but you've written something down, and tomorrow there may be a story in which you can put in something which may not necessarily add to the story in terms of taking the main story forward, but it's something that you require in a description, right? So, in fact, I started noting down episodes of my life or things that I had experienced after that. So what I'm trying to say is that versus writing a story and thinking of, okay, how do I expand the story at that point in time? I think what worked is writing these small things down that I remembered through, that I had experienced, other people had experienced, or you kind of see happening around you. Pen them down because they are part of daily life in which ways. So I think what you kind of told me was that what I'm writing in the story is about life itself. So I need to pick up from life itself and put into what I'm writing. And if you remember, I had converted that 1 pager into a 4 or 5 pager and sent it to you after that conversation. So I've kind of been following those guidelines in whatever I'm writing now. And currently I am expanding those stories that I've written and actually making them proper stories.
But also so there's two things there. It's actually like creating a heap. So I have a whole lot of journals where I just wrote gibberish. When I was sitting outside, I always carry a pen and paper. And even if I turn my computer, you see a load of notebooks here. And you just write whatever you see or hear or feel. Or, especially speech. When some people say the most amazing things and you think, oh, if only I could have written that down. To do that. The other thing is even if you don't refer back to them, they actually get lodged in your subconscious and come out at the right point for you.
Right.
Actually create a heap of unrelated stuff that you might never even open. If I've got a little cupboard there, and if I open it, it'll just fall down. Because I've kept journals from maybe, I don't know, your 25 years, my 25 years.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really bizarre. I actually open and think, wow, I wrote this story 6 years ago and it's appeared now, and yet I didn't actually refer to it. So it obviously got lodged somewhere in my subconscious. And that's one thing. So create a heap of things you see and notice, feelings you have. The other one was actually foreshadow. So when you were saying that when you came to write 4 or 5 pages, you probably put hints of something not being quite right before you got, so that we could utilize it at the end.
Yeah, yeah. No, also, I think, Ameeta, there were a lot of other things that came out in my conversation with you. Uh, I think one of the great exercises you gave me to do was see all the movies you've seen, you know,
Yeah.
and because if you remember, I even discussed I kind of get into screenwriting as well. I'm kind of
Yeah.
doing it simultaneously. So I remember one of the things you told me to do was watch all the good movies that I'd liked and see how much of it is dialogue actually and how much of it is action, and how to convert that into the fact that if my medium is not visual, then whatever I see as action I actually need to write about. I need to describe, I need to be descriptive in terms of where you are, what you are doing, who the person is, what he looks like, what his expression looks like. So actually when you start doing that, you suddenly get material. So even if I'm writing my ghost story, if that's what we're discussing right now when I suddenly start describing the house, the people in the house, and why a certain person would react in a particular way, you suddenly have a page.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the core story. So that whole exercise also helped, because you suddenly see a 11-minute scene in a movie which has no dialogue at all. But if I were to put that down in writing as a dialogue writer or as a screenplay writer or as a story writer, I actually have to describe all of that. And just that act in itself gives you paragraphs of material. So
It's actually,
it was just like, it's something like I may know it, but I kind of realized it after you formalized it for me. If I put it that way. So writing a full-fledged story is very different from, whatever little editing and all I was doing along my professional life. So yeah. I think I want to say which really, really helped me. And I think, a lot of other people I spoke to post that is where you told me just keep writing. Because I remember I should tell you that I wrote on Monday and then I haven't written for the next 6 days, and a month has passed since I last wrote. And that whole thing of at least write 250 to 300 words daily or more, I'm actually practicing that. Some of it is not related to anything, but I'm doing that. But all those things have helped. So I've designated that time and I'm writing in that. So I think these formalizations are what I'm following to the T, and they're working for me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important to keep the same time. And it doesn't matter what you write in that time, but you write. So if you wrote Anu, at some point your brain will say, okay, I'm writing Anu, that my handwriting is slipping, and then you start to actually, your brain starts actually becoming curious about what you're doing, and suddenly a story appears.
Yeah.
A spider sitting, or how did the leaf get on my window when the window was closed? And then suddenly, like who opened the window? It just suddenly just starts appearing. So you don't actually have to have anything there. So I've never had writer's block, because I don't put the pressure on myself that it has to be related to what I'm writing. It can just be about anything I see and feel in that moment. It could be about why part of this cup, why does it have lipstick on it, or how did it happen?
Right.
Anything really, or the temperature of the room, and why am I working in a room that's so full of discomfort.
Ameeta, if you recollect, everything that we ever spoke about, I used to set in the hills. I love the hills, right? For me, the automatic scenario of any story unfolding is in the hills. I can't get away from it. So I think that's one of the things you would also notice, that everything that I've written, down from my non-fiction to the stories that I'm writing, the setting has always been the hills. So I remember you told me that you need to get out of that. Why don't you kind of tax your, your gray cells and trying to get out of your comfort location as well?
Yeah.
So I think we had a long discussion on that, where you specifically told me that when you start writing a detective fiction, base it in a city, for example. Get out of that small town hillside comfort zone and attack something different. And I remember we worked on that and we had long discussion on it, and that's how when I started writing, which hopefully is my detective novel, is I based it in Mumbai. It's not an area I'm comfortable with. In fact, I will need to visit certain areas that I've mentioned in my novel, because I know them more by name versus knowing what is actually around there. And yeah, while I don't have to really visit the hills, I can kind of sit and describe them and,
So
put my
that leads,
character in it very easily.
yeah. And it leads you on to the research. So in my books, I
Mm.
really, although there's no epilepsy, but my character displays, one of them displays epilepsy, but I had to really understand it, even though I wasn't calling it epilepsy, because my book is about shape shifting, and in the hills.
Yes, yes, it's in the Himalayas. That's why I like it.
but it was based on something really real. There was somebody in our neighborhood who was mistreated because she had epilepsy. And when I say neighborhood, where my grandparents lived in the hills. So they, and what she went through. So although it was a fictional character, a shapeshifter, I haven't come across one in real life yet. Hopefully I will. You can make that happen. It was based on reality. So what she was going through was real for somebody who would be reading it. They could relate to it. So the reason why you do all that research is because you want people to relate to it. And actually, even if it's a fictional character, believe that, yeah, there is a possibility. And I've either come across that, or that is how that person would react. So there has to be that sense of connection with your reader. You're always thinking of your reader. Your relationship with your reader starts with the first word you write. It is not in isolation of your reader. And what I love about you already have those connections. You already have that understanding. So the writing I have seen is very powerful. And I love the characters and the juxtaposition that the two characters who are working together in your book have. And the other thing I said to you, which is really important, which I didn't realize when I was writing my book, was actually, if it's a detective story, you're thinking of a series. Now talk to me about that. So what did you learn from that, or what did you come to think for yourself on that one, about the series, about writing the series?
As I mentioned a while back, it's my favorite genre in writing, as well as what I watch on TV. And I have read the Scandinavian authors and Japanese authors very extensively, and I actually prefer their writing a lot more than of course I love Agatha Christie, and kind of grown up with that. But if I was to go beyond Agatha Christie, I would automatically move towards the Scandinavian authors and a few Japanese authors that I read. So I love that style of where the detective, let's say somebody like a Martin Beck, it's all about legwork. It's like actual honest to God, hard sleuthing to get to the heart of the problem and to find the who done it really. So I like that, where you're looking for clues, you're interviewing people. P.D. James is a good example of the kind of stuff I do like, where you talk to people, you put facts together which are kind of not related. They're not dramatic coincidences, but it's honest, hard, police legwork that leads to the final outcome. So I like books like that, and I'm kind of what I'm writing follows firstly, similar lines in terms of who my main character is or who my main detective is. And the second thing is that I like the whole idea of the fact there's a certain style of investigation, and that is the style that's being followed or implemented case on case. So that kind of automatically leads me to think of writing a series. And if I look at the best, all my favorite detectives, they're all, you know, they all have several books in which they feature again and again and again. So, I mean, that's something that I've always wanted to work with. So now that I am getting down to writing, that's how I'm looking at it. So I see my character developing across various books, not just the first book, and they're being, seeing him grow as a person,
Yeah.
see him grow as an experienced detective as well, and hopefully that's what will turn out to be. So yeah, so it's largely my influence, how I've been influenced by the writers that I like and the characters that they've created.
So that's really important, that your character, unlike another book, doesn't start and end. The development doesn't start and end in one book. But even if you were writing a single book, you have to show your character starting here and then changing as the book goes, and the impact of the events on that person and how it changes them. So so you can actually write that outline before even writing a word. You can actually say, this is where I would like him to be. So in my case, my character was really introverted, didn't care about the world, didn't even care about herself. And then by the second book, she has come to actually be more involved with a group of people, and she's thinking more as a team, but she's still not given up on what she wants, right? And in the third book, hopefully she's gone the full, and she things are going to be more about out there than about herself. But she's changing. She's, it's really important that your character is developing, and also some things stay the same in whatever situation. It's also, there's certain aspects that will not change whatever the situation. And that's also lovely, because that's what they're expecting to see. They don't want. They're very happy with a gradual change, a believable change, but they don't want to suddenly flip off a character. We think, well, wait a minute, that person would never do that. But you have to live in the shoes of your character. You have to be your character and think. It's like being an actor. You have to be your character. I mean, I say, take your characters out for dinner. Sit down on a table. Just imagine they're there. And, sometimes when I'm writing, like with Wolf in particular, I was writing about Wolf, and he said, well, I'll never say that. I mean, that's rubbish. I would never say that. And I thought, and you're thinking, wait a minute. And you look back and you go, yeah, he would. There's nothing that he suddenly doesn't become vulnerable to anybody because he's never done that. He has been very clever about it. And so for him to suddenly get to that point, I would have to do a lot more work. So your character, and it's a very spooky thing, but your characters start telling you that you can't actually work in that particular way. So you actually, they move you along. So what, I'm just trying to think. So we've talked about your character development. We've talked about, so now you've actually moved your game from ghost stories to writing about the books you love. I think it's really important to want to read the book you write. But also the fact that you're writing about a city that, although everybody knows about its glitz, it has so many secrets. Now that in itself is a world of, especially at the moment, according to the media, there's a lot of excitement and thrill. So there's a lot of richness for you to pull things out of. And
so I think what was critical is that I have, of course, done some online classes, not on writing, but on other, hobbies that I tend to follow. So there's always a, what should I say, a format, right, in which you get taught. There are certain
Yeah.
steps you follow, certain basics you're taught, and then there's this whole formal process, just like education is. There's certain books that you do, and there's certain processes you follow. Now, classes like that kind of tend to stereotype you in a way, and there's a certain, taken for granted aspect that this is how writing or anything needs to be taught, right? But now in a class where you have a lot of people, everybody has their own questions and everybody has their own way of doing things. It's like painting. You all paint the same picture, but they all look different. So it's your own interpretation of the picture and your own usage of color. So I think what I always liked about you in all our conversations is the fact that you first allow me to speak, because what you're kind of doing is you're understanding what is it that I want. I mean, you may have a coaching formula because you do formally coach as well. A lot of people talk to you, but that's not how you and I dealt whenever we did speak to one another. So for me, that was very comforting. So first, you understand what is it that I even want out of you. So it's not like you start telling me how to construct a sentence. So I remember in the first few things, I was largely talking to you, heard me out, and what my issues were. And then you said, okay, this is what you want to do. Why don't you think like this? Why don't you work this? If these are your problems and these are your loopholes, this is how you can plug them. So I think that is what to me made maximum sense in my conversation with you. That you were addressing my problems, you were addressing my concerns, and you were leading me on as a person. While yes, it does come from your knowing me also for a while, but you never knew me from a writing space, right? But you still gave me that comfort of understanding me. So if somebody were to come to me, I mean that's the formula I would certainly want to adopt, to understand what that person wants and then let him know what he or she can do better. Versus there being a structured coaching formula where you say, okay, this is how you write a book. So I think that's for me very important. The fact that you understand me and understand what I want to do, and then give me advice or guidelines basis that. And I think all along that's how it's been. So I mean, if you get what I'm trying to say,
I
it's the
do.
understanding of what I want and then advising me versus just coaching the way it's meant to be.
Wait, what I like to do when I'm coaching somebody is, like, you came actually with the ghost stories. And you came up with almost wanting to write what you'd heard. And while we went with that to begin with, the more we worked together, what I do with all my clients, whether it's writing or clear thinking coaching, I actually start prodding to find out what's your bigger picture. And your bigger picture was much bigger than ghost stories. Your bigger picture was huge. It was, I want to write a successful detective series. Now, the thing with successful detective series, they can go on for years and years and years. It's a huge ambition, but for you and where you're located and the and all the experience you have, and you're actually really well traveled as well. You are really well traveled, which you haven't talked about. I mean, the biking, the hiking, and the horse riding. I mean, you can be going in any direction, right? Events, exhibitions, the people you have met, the actors, the actresses, we've seen you against, the photographs, we've seen all of that. And even when, the stories you must have written, had in the India Times of India, or is it India Today? You have a vast, rich resource that people like me are really envious of. So to achieve your writing goals, you actually need to think big. And with any coaching thing, it's actually think bigger. Think so much bigger, because actually what you're asking to do can be achieved when you think something much bigger. The bigger the better, because then you're actually Otherwise, you'll be, if you think your pinnacle is just writing this one book, you are going to go, oh, well, it'll never happen. But if you're actually thinking so big, this suddenly doesn't seem such a big deal. You know, it's like, yeah, okay, I can write. I mean, that's almost like a chapter, or it's a short story is almost like a chapter or 2 chapters in a book. I mean, yeah, I can do that because I know where I want to go. So it's actually the promise of thinking big. And in your case, you weren't thinking big enough, but I couldn't say that to you on the first day. So when you're coaching, you actually coach people slightly away from their comfort zone each time, just so that they can actually build this bigger picture, which you might not have had on the first day. So there's always that sense of room of growth, and then you actually get really involved in it, because then the coaching in any situation, you start putting in, well, if I want to do that, how do I work backwards from that? And then you start putting in the structure, and there is a structure, but the structure is built around you, not around anybody else. It's only unique to you. All right. I'm not going to, I did not give myself the vision of writing detective stories because they are the most successful genre. The crime is the most successful genre and the most lucrative one, but yet I've not done that because I have to go with what's unique to me. But to you, you have to work with the person. And so your structure is unique to you and how you do it and how you feel it. There are things that you must do. You must write every day. It doesn't matter if it's about this or something else. You are always curious about your character. You live with your character 24 hours. So when you're going out somewhere, you think that will work. The way that person handled that napkin on the table, that's intriguing. That could be put in my book. Or that side glance, that was an interesting side glance. And then, you might follow, everything and anything can be put in and stored. So that is something that I would teach anybody who was writing. But, it's actually about you. You came up with all of those things, and I just said it back to you. I didn't come up.
Also, Ameeta, I think it was also something about, what tends to happen is you were kind of, and is that the term when you say beta reader? Is that the right term?
Yeah, beta reader. Yeah.
I was kind of bouncing my ideas off you, because I'd written them and they were lying in a book, and I'd never kind of shared them with anyone. I remember I told you that as well. So I was kind of, even showing them to you to see that what I was writing, was that something even good enough to put somewhere? Expanding it is one thing, but is it even, am I even putting down stuff that is interesting to people? And I think that was another thing that we had a lot of discussion on, where you actually did that whole confidence building exercise. I think, that yes, ideas matter, and how interestingly to put those ideas. And honestly, I've kind of only spoken to you about things that I've already written, and I think that was a good experience as well, to for somebody to tell you that okay, something like this may not work, or something like this have a lot of incorrect facts. I remember you corrected a lot of timeline structures for me as well, and the fact that yes, ideas like this X, Y, and Z are interesting for certain reasons, and those are the kind of ideas that you can build up on. So I think all of that really helps along the way, because they are, like you said, certain formal structures to follow, yes, and how your ideas need to be built up to make it interesting. So I think that whole process of taking that one thought and really making it into a proper story, I think you guided me on all aspects of that. I think the advantages is we are friends. I can call you up anytime. So
what I loved was that your style, I was a little envious of it actually, because I know that we talked about having more description, but the description was more about not just focusing on the main characters, but also checking out what the emotion is running on the other person's face, and actually thinking about why would their stands be affected by what this person is saying and doing. So actually fleshing them out really. But what I loved about you was I thought you should be a screenwriter. So now it's okay, you should be a screenwriter, but you saying you want to be an author, So it's actually writing stuff that could go to screen. But in the end, of course, that's going to be your decision. So we also talked about if you were to write a screenwriting, how would you do it? So we did a bit of an exercise on that as well. And I think if you are thinking, so therefore there, in those cases, the description has, if you're writing a book, then the description has to be relevant, but not over the top, because in the end, it is the dialogue or the silence even that run it. So the description has to play a very concise part. And also in today's reader, they're not, people don't have so much time, so they don't necessarily go for too much description, but the description cannot be eliminated, but it needs to really work. In British terms, it's arse off. So, and I felt that your style leads itself to script writing.
Yeah, I know you did.
Right, can go on screen.
Yeah,
I felt that from the first sentence you wrote. And like I said, envious.
So you tell me, Ameeta, I have a question then.
Yes.
So now you've got your second book coming out.
Yes.
Right? And yours is also a series, and you've kind of played it across two worlds, two separate worlds, India and the UK. So now we're talking about screenwriting. While you were writing the book, did you ever keep in mind or think that, hey, one day you would love to see it on screen?
Yeah, I mean,
I think it has a lot of elements for that, for sure.
Yeah, I tend to, for me, I'm a bit of a bizarre one. I actually see something play out in front of me and then I write it. So I write it as, and then he picks up his cup or something. I actually see that and then I have to rub those lines out because it looks too much like I'm watching a movie and writing it out. So for me, I'm more visual. So I actually see the whole story playing out in vivid color and movement, and then I write it. So yeah. So I think.
Yeah, because
I don't know if it's because
it does come out in your book. That's why I was thinking, because you were talking about screenwriting.
Screenwriting.
So yeah.
And yeah. Okay, you caught me. Yes, that's the answer. Yes. I mean, you know how people have vision boards. I have a vision board where I've actually created a poster, and I did this before I finished the first book. A poster of my character and saying, "Come and see this movie, premiere night." Because that has always been. I write with a sense of movie in front of me, and that's why there's a lot of pace in my books, and maybe too much happens. Because I'm thinking of the screen all the time, because that's how I see a story. I see it in colors and feeling and smell, and then I have to write it down. So
this actually gives me an idea. So I should actually create one of those detective walls for my detective story.
Yeah.
You see in all the series, right? So all the suspects are lined up with arrows and lines. I think I should start doing that as well.
Yeah,
do that. Reminder of where the story is going.
I have got loads of pictures that I drew before I wrote what I wrote. And they're really bad ones, so I'm not going to share them. But they're really, or I would say to my daughter who does draw, and I would say, "Oh, I want these two people to be sitting on the roof against the roof wall," and then I would write my chapter, because for me, I get really, when I can see something and feel something, I can write it. It goes that way around. Yeah, I would love to.
Yeah, so see, that's something I don't do too well, and we've spoken about that also. Kind of get that whole visual feel when you describe. So that's something, I certainly need to work on.
So what do you get? But what do you get? Because you don't have to be the same as me.
Sorry?
What do you get? What sense?
So I don't visualize it the way you are describing it. Yeah, it's like, okay, there are two people sitting. So, I'll probably say that, they were sitting there in the room, or he walked into the room and sat on the sofa. But I'm not exactly imagining where that sofa is lying. You know, like you said, it's all visual for you. You can probably spread that whole living room out in front of you. You know, for
Yeah.
me, it's not exactly that. I tend to come back to that if I get into a lengthy description, or if a lot more plays out in that particular physical area, then obviously I have to get a bit more specific. But if not, then I don't kind of imagine it like that. It's more like, okay, he came and sat on the sofa. Not because I imagined that there was a sofa there, it's just, yeah, well, okay, it's a living room, so there will be one. So I don't imagine it that much in detail. You know, so those are a few things I know I need to work on, because now that I've been reading and rereading certain descriptions in certain books, they're very, very elaborate, and you can actually see it play out now that I'm paying specific attention to it.
Okay, stop here. Let's have a go. Let's have a go. So you've got two people sitting on the sofa. Who sat first?
No, yeah, okay, I never imagined, but now that you're asking you, yeah, okay, so the person who was already in the room sat first, and then the person who walked in
And
sat
what is that?
after.
What person is that? Is it a male?
Sorry?
Or female? Is it a male or female? How old is that person?
Yeah, so it would be older female in what I'm writing right now, and she's a mother of the person who has
Okay,
been
so
killed, and the person who walks in is the detective.
no, stop. So this female is sitting on the sofa, right? Okay. Now, what is this female wearing?
She's wearing a sari.
She's wearing a sari. So what an older woman do when she settles herself down in the sofa?
Sorry, what will?
How does she settle herself? How would an older woman settle herself into a sofa with a sari? And
She would
what be her actions with her hands?
Yeah, she would kind of sit on the corner of the sofa, considering the situation. That's how I see it. And she would have her hand on her lap because she's just heard bad news. And
Would she have
would
adjusted
just be
her
wringing
sari?
her hands and just sitting.
So would she have adjusted her sari, like the pallu and things?
Yeah, she would. She would when she would sit, because it tends to come under you, so you need to adjust it. Yeah.
So okay, your scene starts with her sitting on the sofa, but she might be sitting. The detective comes in. He sees her sitting at the corner of the sofa, sitting very uncomfortably, fidgeting with her hands and her pallu. Her hands inadvertently were going to her pallu, and she was straightening it. She made contact with him when she heard his footsteps.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. You know, you've kind of guided me through these steps, so I'm beginning to get there. But in terms of descriptions, I still have some way to go. I keep coming back to it, as I said, and saying, oh yeah, okay, I can add this as well. I can add this as well. I can add this as well. But it's always I need to come back to it.
So what I would say to you is, when you do your morning practice or your afternoon or whenever you do that practice or writing, that's the place. Not so much when you're writing the novel, because you want to get that in, and that's the place where you actually either write about. So when you're actually visiting people, okay, and maybe not in COVID days, but see, like how I'm using my hands. So there might be a character that does more hand movement than speaking in complete sentences, right? So you are going to start becoming the detective. So as the detective, you are really curious about what you come across, everything. And when you have that time to write, you are going to be writing about simple things like the character that, I don't know, she might be a film actress. And while she's talking, she's very alluring, but she's alluring with her hands as well. So you actually you stop hearing, and this detective has to pay attention, because actually she's purposely he realizes that she's purposely maneuvering her attention away from her eyes, because eyes, maybe that's his specialty. He can read people based on their twitches or their eyes or anything like that, but she's alert, moving him away, and actually, or maybe her eyes are not communicating what she's trying to communicate. So, like there's actually a bit of fear in her eyes, but she's actually acting really like happy, and, she's the entertainer, but actually her eyes don't match. So do you see what I mean? If you become that detective, and notice all the little things. And then when you're actually doing your writing practice, which might not be, it does not need to be related to your book. It could be the first 10 minutes before you start writing, or the first 5 minutes, just to get the flow. Then, you know, if you just add things like that and then put that away and then go back to your book, you'll find that you will be much more precise, and your reader's actually going to be interested. Or your reader, you might not say, oh, she was behaving, the detective had a thought. Your reader will say, oh, he's checking out what she's doing, without being told.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah. We have some more sessions to do, Ameeta. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you feel? I mean, do you feel, you know, you came in with, I would like to write books. How do you feel in yourself that you're doing that now? You know, so how do you, I mean, obviously it's not a problem to solve. It's a, you're moving into a creative arts, but how do you feel about it in terms of emotion? Like in terms of confidence and doability,
yeah.
and
no, I certainly I've actually, for the first time, I've written some 6 or 7 chapters. Not all are complete, but at least I know what exactly needs to go into them. Some are very quite extensively fleshed out, and I've progressed quite a bit into my first story. And like we once discussed as well, where I tend to get distracted by some other ideas that strike me, which I need to write down, and kind of get distracted from my current story. But yeah, I mean, I feel that I can write, and as far as possible, I try and practice that, adding at least one paragraph into the story daily, if not more. And I've reached a healthy 6,000 plus words. Yes.
Ooh, that's good.
Quite something, considering I probably had some 600 before. So yeah, so I'm following those. I actually have those points written down, and I kind of refer back to them off and on. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, you're kind of just writing, and sometimes there's a lot comes to the mind to write. There are days that I manage to write 2-3 pages actually. I mean, a lot of stuff needs to be edited, yes, and there are a lot of areas where I need to do research, so I highlight all of that. But at least the story is progressing. Honestly, I've never gone that far into a novel ever before. Short stories, yes, but certainly not that. So I feel that I can write it for sure. I have the points with me, based on which I can write, and now I think it's more a question of making it a habit and actually reaching that end point someday.
So it's not different from anything else you've done. That was also the truth, because actually, although it sounds all very filmy and exciting that you're writing, there is structures that you can follow, and therefore they suddenly become quite possible. So for example, I would have a notebook. One, I would have a diary on your computer or on your phone, and you could actually say, I would always write what I've done as well, because actually you feel, oh wow, I actually write my to-do list as I've finished something. That's me. That's how I do it. I'm not recommending that for anybody else, but I write, oh wow, I did this, and then I put a tick because I've done it. It's like I give myself that thing. But what I do also have is I write down research. If there's anything that I need to, so one of the things is what I've done. 2 is I do, even if there's no research to be done, I do have the title research, so that I know that I've got to go off and do some research. On 3, I might also do check this with somebody else if I think that, the editing does not happen until you finish the book. Do not edit. I made the mistake where I used to write something, then I edit it, then I write, and I must have spent a year doing that. And then, so you could have said I wrote the book quicker than I spent too long because the second book was quicker because I didn't edit it first time around. I didn't edit any of my chapters at all. And a lot of writers actually send that completely unedited thing to a professional editor. I'm not, I don't have the confidence to do that, because I would like, but I edit it after I finished. And then I also, because you'll notice 1 or 2 things. You will start writing something in 1 chapter, and then 10 chapters later, you will have forgotten that you've written that. and you will reintroduce it in. So one of those will have to go later on. So there'll be lots of things you'll need to re-edit, and you'll find that you have given your characters something. Sometimes even what you write has been given to two characters. I've done that as well. So if you're always re-editing and perfecting this first thing, and then you don't even use it later on, then it's a waste of your time. So my first chapter was shifted down to the third chapter. So in my first book. So all that, or trying to get the reader hooked in on the first line, was such a waste of time, because actually I still, I ended up writing my first 3 chapters right at the end of the first book. And so I had to again go to the thing that my first line needs to hook. In fairness, I think all chapters probably need that anyways. The first line is the most powerful line. Nobody's going to go beyond that. But edit once you've written everything. Edit, even if you've left like one chapter. Sometimes I've left a chapter to just maybe even 300 words, because I don't really know. I don't really know how to flesh it, and also never write in order. I wrote my last chapter of my second book first in the whole series, and then the book was fleshed out backwards.
Yeah.
So I've never written my chapters in order, but I do have an outline. So it's just a line, and then I have a grid, and I say what's going to happen in each one vaguely. But which one I choose to write about first, it's never the first one. It's usually either the last one, because I like to know where my story does end, and even that changes, because where it ends, like I said, and I ended up writing a whole book before the second one, so it might not be the end. So, but do not write your book in order. You don't have to.
Yeah.
Because you might not be inspired by that point, but you're really inspired by another point. So when you write,
that happens.
You might write backwards.
Right. Yeah, that tends to happen. Sometimes I'm in the middle of something and I'm like, okay, I'll come back to this later.
That's fine.
Some scene, it's not interesting me right now. That does tend to happen. But yeah, I guess I've never kind of skipped too far ahead. I mean, anyway, I've just started writing, so I can't say there's enough material also. But yeah, that's interesting to kind of let something go and then just move ahead and describe something that you know is going to eventually come.
Yeah. Because then you can actually go and foreshadow, so you can go, oh yeah, I'm going to need this. It's like, okay, it's a bit like being a murderer. Oh, I'm going to need something to hit this person on the head with. Well, I can't just suddenly make out as if it was sitting in the corner. That's really lazy, right? Maybe it needs to be part of the background always. It could be the shepherd's hook that's always been there, and because he has sheep, and he takes it out, and he has his cap, but this time there's a blob of blood on that on the hook.
I think what you also said, and I think you've done it very extensively for your book, Ameeta, is where you told me that you can possibly write the story in half an hour.
Yeah.
Because I know what the murder is about, and I know who is the murderer, and then you put certain facts in between, and your basic story is there. But it's all about the research that needs to be done. About how a person reacted, what does a mob look like, what does an autopsy look like, what are the different ways of murdering, because about how you're writing, if you're even something as very simple as you're writing about the detective, so what is his designation within the department, what is the department actually called in the city of Mumbai, and now that I'm writing, all of these are facts I need to find out, because I know you traveled extensively in India while you were doing research for your first book. You came here, you went to the hills, you met up with
forestry
kids, you met with the forest department. I know you did extensive research on that. So yeah, that's something I know when I'm making those notes of what all I need to ask, who are the people I need to ask, the kind of people I need to reach out to, because a large part of my story will get filled in once that research is done. Because okay, I have this scene about the autopsy, but I need to obviously write about it extensively, so I will need to visit and I will need to talk to
and the
some
smells
people.
and the smells and how and also how uncomfortable you might feel in going to some of those places.
Yeah, yeah.
All the great authors, at least the British ones, I would say, like Enid Blyton, from where I live, I'm not joking, but Enid Blyton wrote about cherry tree farm. There's loads of cherry tree farms in my area, but she wrote about a house where a hermit lived in the cherry, where the cherry tree farm family go and visit the, the Lord. That is literally around the. If I cross the field, which you've seen, you will find that house, and it's called Sundial House. And there used to be a hermit living there, right? The woods that Roald Dahl talks about are Wendover woods. They write about things they actually know, because then you can actually describe them. And what's lovely is when writers, even if, and then Lorna Doone is definitely Devon. Places love it that you write about them. And you automatically get readers from those areas. Oh, it's about Mumbai. Okay. Just the fact, even if you called Mumbai something else, but if you described it, they will get hooked on the idea that I know where that place is. And what's funny about Roald Dahl books, and there's another one, people actually say the places are in, that they knew somebody, or, different counties are saying that a book was based on where they are. So he's very clever. He makes it so that people actually think that they can go and visit it. So of course, he didn't know that he was going to have all these movies, or perhaps he did, because he was writing for James Bond. But when the movies came out, so now people are actually saying, this is where Roald Dahl was, or this is the location, this could be the location. And your book has more life to it. Your character has more life to it. And if it's, it just adds something. My book Kamush Valley is based on Dehradun, but in the 80s, in terms of location, not so much. I mean, mobile phones weren't in the 80s, but just the location, or how the location looked. It's the 70s and 80s, but the people are modern. So it's that thing, it's that sense of belonging that people can relate to that. Yeah, I've seen that place. God, it is a very dusty looking building, or and things like that. It's really important. It's really important that people can relate to it. And the other thing was, somebody wrote, I do a lot of editing for other people, but for, nonfiction as well. And there's a wonderful coach wrote something about a broken winged bird, and then how it was stuck in a room fluttering around. And unfortunately, she sent it to me, and I said, well, a broken winged bird cannot flutter around, so you choose between the two. You have to choose, because somebody else will do that. And she sent it to me, I picked it up. But that is not anybody would spend time thinking about the broken wing and the bird fluttering, because she was just using it as a metaphor. But it wasn't, but that sort of thing, there will be people out there who will think, well, wait a minute, you can't use that rifle, you would have to do this, and then, you wouldn't be able to use it in that way. So even when I have my character taking the sword, which I know nothing about. I had to watch lots of videos of how this South Indian sword is used. And it's the one that wraps around your body, and then you can.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't even know the name of it, so I had to find the name, and something Urbi or something like that. And I had to actually watch video upon video, but would it be realistic? Now, normal person's not going to care, because they wouldn't have seen that. But I felt that if somebody had seen it, it needs to be true. I mean, would it actually, how would he not get hurt himself if it's wrapped around his body? I think it's important. It might be the exciting side of things, but it's important.
So anyway, I guess you've also got to get when you're being descriptive in a book, and you're trying to obviously put the reader in the situation that you're describing. I think you obviously need to get things right, for him to really feel he's there. And I think at the end of the day, that's really what works for a story in the end. If you feel involved with the story, and you feel you can understand what's going on, you can imagine what's going on. And I think if you look at successful story writers, I think that's what they do very brilliantly well.
Yeah. And not everything you research goes in your book. just because you researched it. But you need to be comfortable that, you know, I didn't write about how the cloth was wrapped and all that because I didn't, but I just, you know, I probably used one stroke of it. Or maybe I just, you know,
Or it probably just helps you visualize the situation, not
yeah,
necessarily the reader.
yeah.
Helps you write it better. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what, and the thing is, when you come to the editing side, you will cut out a lot because you'll actually think that's too descriptive. What does that, I mean, you know, I remember writing about a fly landing up on an apple and I was thinking, okay, that was really lovely description, beautiful. And then but I'm gonna have to get rid of it. And the other thing is, I know you're going to find that the most beautiful sentence you have, the one that you're absolutely in love with, is the one that you're going to remove first. And it takes a lot of guts to do that, but quite often that's the sentence that needs to go.
Yeah. Even I have these certain sentences I hear, I say, oh, I must put this into the story. I have those sentences. I have a collection of those.
Yeah. Also, keep reading your, books in your genre, because actually that will enrich the way you write. Like whatever you read somehow does influence what you write.
Yeah, it does. So, of course.
So I was, like a lot of us, I was really into Ayn Rand when I was a kid. I can see Ayn Rand in places and in my book. And I think I can only actually say places, only one place, when she stands on the tank and there's a golden light behind her. Really innocuous stuff, but to me, it's one of the descriptions I always remember. So that's a good thing. So I would say, read, and, if you find a sentence you really love, you don't need to use that sentence, but you need to understand why you love it. Because if you loved it, that's the sort of sentence, or that's the sort of composition that somebody else is going to love. Understand why you love something and bring that into your book. So you're writing that for yourself as well. You would like to read your own book.
Yeah, true, of course, absolutely. I mean, the end product that you're going to put out there, you need to be happy with it.
Yeah. But yeah, you need to be tickled pink that I wrote that book. I loved it. Oh my God, how clever I am. And you really need to say this, because writers don't do it. How clever am I?
Yeah, totally.
Oh my God, I read this,
Yeah. I say that all the time, every time I do a few odd things.
Well, you're ahead of me, because I was like, oh, I don't know, it's not good enough. It's taken me 2-3 years to work out that actually, no, you know what? When something's good, just say it's good. It doesn't matter. You have to feel good that you did something that you read.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel really good every time I put a few words down. Like an achievement of a kind. It is.
So I think you've covered the interaction with me. You've covered what you wanted to do and what you are doing, which is so much bigger than the ghost stories. They were great, by the way. So I'm expecting them to be a TV series or something, like Road.
I'm expecting them to be a TV series.
Unexpected Tales. Okay, so what advice would you give someone contemplating to work with me?
Obviously, be the fact that, which I kind of dwelt on a little earlier, was about the fact that there is certainly a personal touch there, and I think that's very important. And where you as a person are understood, and what you want is understood before you're given any advice or guidelines. Other than, of course, a few basic black and white things that need to be done for writing. And I think that's one that's very important. And I think a lot of people look for that. Everybody wants to have a personal touch when they're being taught something, right? Instead of it being, a generalized situation. So I think that would something which would emotionally work for everyone. And obviously that leads to, your style and your issues being enhanced, or rather the solution to your issues being enhanced. And that's what you're really looking at the end of the day. So I think that for me would certainly be a key factor. And I think the second thing, which I don't know if I've mentioned earlier, would be the fact that you tend to give a lot of examples when you explain stuff, your own as well. And I think that works very well with people. So if I in any situation, if I'm able to tell somebody that, I've experienced it, I'm talking to you out of an experience, or, I know because I've been through it, or somebody close to me has been through it, that always is something that's better received by people. So I think you always tend to give a lot of examples of how you did something like research, for example. You spoke about that when you told me I need to do it, or why you wrote something and why you wrote a book in a particular way, or the fact that you tend to visualize stuff which you write about in the book and that comes out in your book as well. So I think, or you give examples about other authors in specific, he described this or she described that. So I think when there are a lot of examples to explain something, even if it's a very mundane, routine, black and white rule that you need to follow, I think I, as a person, realize that okay, what you're telling me is something that you as a writer have done, other great writers have also done. So that gives you that sense of yes, I'm doing the right thing. And I think for somebody who's starting out writing something, that's very important. The fact that you've understood me as a person, me as a writer, and what I want, and that what you're explaining to me is something that's been done, tried, tested, and has been successful also. I think it lends a hell of a lot of confidence. So for me, these one or two things particularly stand out in my interactions with you, and I think that would be important to other people as well. And then, of course, you have corrected what I've written. You have, told me particular way in which I could set my writing schedule. Now, all of that I think comes into play. So, yeah, I think those would be the two key reasons I would tell somebody that you make a great coach, or at least you make a great friend, in terms of hand holding somebody. So I think that's important. And I can call you up anytime, Ameeta.
That's true. I mean, if I'm coaching you, you can call me up in 24/7. Even over this distance of Mumbai and London. So the other thing which you didn't mention, which I'm smiling about, is I remember there was a story about an earring, and we had completely different perspectives of that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you from the writer, and the person who it was a personal story to you, and we had debate. We're not shy in coaching. You're not shy to actually call you up on things. Even if something is so precious to you, I would still call you up on it and say, well, that might be true.
Right.
But
right. Yeah.
would it not, to actually get you to come away, as you said earlier, from your comfort zone and actually being a little discomfort and see it. And, although you're utilizing the skeleton of it, but could it be something else? Could it be even more than what your original story is saying? So happy to debate that.
Yeah, exactly. No,
I don't remember who won. I think you probably still went with what you wanted, but it was after a good discussion of what.
Yeah. But then this ties up to an earlier point that I think we made in this conversation about the fact that, when you point out certain things in the story that somebody's written, it opens up, more doorways for you to expand that story, right? So, I wrote it because it was something that has happened to somebody, to a member of my family, and it's a story we heard as kids. So for me, the story was the way it was, and as kids, we never questioned certain aspects of it, right? But you rightly pointed out that if I'm putting the story out there to a reader, there would certainly be certain aspects of it which would get questioned from a credibility space, or even if it's a ghost story and you leave a lot to imagination, there are certain facts that need to be in place, which we as kids never thought of, and I just penned the story down as I remembered it. So that obviously helped me. It was a bit of a resistance, but yeah, I got what you were saying, and we kind of reached a midway path and did it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about coaching. It's actually getting you to question you. And then if you do stay with something, then you actually know why you're staying with it. You're not staying with it because it's something you've always done, or it's something you actually vaguely believe in, or you've never questioned it before. It's something that you really want to keep in there because of, and then that's when you stand back and go, okay, now you know why you want that. Before you didn't know
Yeah.
why you wanted it. And now,
Yeah.
you know, suddenly it's the most important thing. So fine. But now you know why it's there. It's not just there. And I think
True.
it's really-
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This has been great fun.
Yeah.
You know what? It's an hour long
Yeah. Okay.
and
So
bit.
that's more work for you, Ameeta.
And more editing for me. But I really enjoyed it. You were really good. And thank you so much. And you have so much experience. I think I can really see, I already know, because I have read bits of your detective things or ideas. I already feel the grime and the patience and the lack of impatience from people dealing with your detective. I already have those characters are already in front of me, and I have even got, you know, if your detective was sitting on the sofa, I know how he would sit. So you are actually a very powerful writer, and you know that,
Thank you.
you are a powerful writer, and I'm expecting you to leapfrog, you know, poor me, big time. But you also have but you have such depth in your life anyhow, and such richness, and the people you've met, and yourself, and the things you believe in, and you will find that parts of you will appear in your book. So wait for that. Somebody will say, "Oh, I recognized you in your book," and you think, "No, you didn't. I wrote about somebody else." There'll be two aspects. So, you know, don't be surprised if that happens. But it was lovely talking to you, and I'm
Yes, you too. And I wish you all the best for your book, Ameeta. Keep us updated.
I will do.
When
And your
it's coming out.
series. Yeah,
Yeah?
and your series.
Yes, hopefully one day.